Good morning, everyone that's here in the building and out there in virtual land. Good morning, commissioners. I am standing in for our fearless leader, Chairman Lilly. He's not able to make it today. He's traveling. So you get the B team today. We'll get through it though. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to all of you for joining us at today's very important meeting at the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Today, we're going to hear about several important changes which will affect the entire alcoholic beverage industry in the coming months. One of these is the implementation of the Alcohol Industry Management System, or AIMS. This incredible new technology will roll out this fall and gives TABC customers at long last the ability to apply for and track their licenses and permits online. Yay. Another issue that I'd like to draw your attention to are the fees charged by the state for businesses seeking an alcoholic beverage permit. For the first time in more than a decade, we're considering much needed updates to our fee schedule. As some of you may know, the legislature in 2019 took two important steps as part of the TABC Sunset Bill. First, our lawmakers halved the number of permit types issued by this agency, rolling up several subordinate permits and awarding a host of new privileges to thousands of businesses. They also gave TABC the ability to set its own fees in order to ensure that the cost of obtaining a license or permit is commensurate with the cost of issuing and regulating that permit. We'll have a report from staff on the proposed fees a little later. With that, I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners for any comments.
Call us to order.
Sorry?
Save the time to call us into order.
Oh, it is 10:31 that we are calling into order.
Good morning, everyone from El Paso. All I can say is I'm excited that next meeting I should be in Austin at long last. And this is a very exciting times for these license changes, and look forward to these discussions today and over the next couple months. Again, back in Austin for the next couple.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great that we're opening up. It's great that businesses can do what they're supposed to do now. And I'm happy that the agency is helping them do that. This is an exciting time, and look forward to getting it done.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, those were some earth-shattering comments, evidently. Okay, we'd also like to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and now I believe we are going to induct some individuals into the TABC inaugural induction ceremony. Right.
Approval of commission meeting minutes for last time.
Okay, I'm trying, where's my next? Sorry, hold on a second. I need a cheat script here. Okay. The next agenda item is approval of commission meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2021. So I so move. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Atkins, I second.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
All right, all have voted. The minutes have been approved. And the votes have been recorded. Okay, so today is a special day. We are announcing our first inductees to the TABC Hall of Honor. This program honors past TABC employees who made an incredible impact on the agency, and will induct the first two honorees today in person. For more on that and to recognize these incredible employees, I turn it over to our Director of Human Resources, Amanda Fletcher. Nice to see you, Amanda.
Good morning. Turn to the side. All right, good morning, Commissioners. Again, my name is Amanda Fletcher, Director of Human Resources, and today I'm pleased to present you with our selections for the first Hall of Honor. Next slide, please. TABC established the Hall of Honor in 2020 to recognize the outstanding service, leadership, and personal contributions made by employees who made the TABC a better place during their time here, setting the bar high for those who follow them. Next slide, please. The eligibility criteria for induction into TABC's Hall of Honor targets employees who have retired directly from the TABC. They may be civilians or certified peace officers, living or deceased, and have distinguished themselves by one of three categories. First, they have epitomized TABC's organizational values, such as modeling our cornerstones of service, courtesy, integrity, and accountability. Second, they're recognized as being a trailblazer with extraordinary and positive impact to TABC. And finally, they served as a critical change agent, changing the outlook and focus of the organization or shaping the organizational environment in a positive way for the future. Next slide, please. Last summer, there was a call for nominations that was sent out to TABC employees, industry members using industry and employee networks, and social media platforms. The nomination committee reviewed all nominations and made recommendations to the executive director who made final selections. We're privileged today to induct one civilian and one certified peace officer into the inaugural Hall of Honor. Next slide, please. Before I introduce the honorees, I just want to share information about the next round of selections. In July, our communications team will announce another call for nominations. The deadline to be considered will be September 30th. Any individuals nominated this past year will remain in the pool for consideration next year. Now, I'll ask Ms. Eleanor Ramirez to join the Commissioner Marino and Executive Director in the presentation of awards. We need a bio review first. Over to you. Ms. Eleanor Ramirez was a member of the TABC family from September 26, 1994 to May 31st, 2018. As a license and permit specialist, Eleanor was the agency's front lines, and her level of customer service truly went above and beyond. It was just in her nature to be courteous and compassionate, and it showed in her relationships with the applicants and license holders she served. Eleanor was truly a living example of our mission statement, Texans helping businesses, protecting communities. She was an exceptional representative of our cornerstones, service, courtesy, integrity, and accountability. Eleanor treated everyone with kindness and respect. She received many kudos from applicants and industry members alike. She had a gift of rapport that lasted through her 20+ years with the TABC, made evident by the number of people who attended her retirement ceremony. So we have a few awards here. So Hall of Honor certificate signed by Commissioner Reno and the Executive Director. Let me know.
There's one goodie for you already. We've got several
Oh,
others.
And then we have a state of Texas flag flown over the Capitol and a certificate stating so. And then also we have our 85th anniversary coin.
Here's a coin.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna make me cry.
But don't you cry, because then I'll cry, and then it's gonna get it all going.
Mr. Ramirez has one guest, Stephanie Vargas. If you'd like to come up now. She was the individual who nominated Ms. Ramirez, and she's also a current TBC employee and auditor in our San Marcos office.
And we'll get everybody holding all her goodies.
One more.
Okay,
I didn't know.
you may be seated now. All right, next I'll ask Ms. Lisa Bonner Carter to go ahead and join us at the front. She's accepting awards on behalf of her father, Quentin Bonner. All right, Quentin R. Bonner was a member of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage family from September 3rd, 1963 to October 31st, 1989. Quentin came to TABC, then known as the Texas Liquor Control Board, in September 1963. Having graduated from Prairie View A&M University with a master's degree in agriculture, he was a trailblazer even then, earning his degrees during the heat of the civil rights movement. Quentin called Elm Mott, near Waco, his home. Quentin was the first African-American inspector to work for the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Although he was stationed in Houston as an undercover agent, he was assigned all over the state, working bootlegger, whiskey still, and prohibited hours cases. In Houston, Quentin was noted for closing down the so-called fraternal clubs that were prolific in the 1960s and 70s. Fraternals claimed to be exempt from gross receipt taxes and were infamous for operating during prohibited hours. Quentin was respected by all who knew him and was even called upon by outside agencies to help accomplish their undercover missions.
I bet you have some great stories to tell.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And your flag.
Awesome.
Nice.
Thank you.
Hall of Honor certificate and another flag flown over the Capitol.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then your.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh, thank
you. Thank
And your guest, Mr. Carter, may join
Let's
us.
give him something to hold too.
you.
There's a flag.
Thank you.
Oh, here's your coin. Okay, there you go. Okay.
All right, commissioners, do you have any additional words you'd like to mention before we move on to our next item?
Just a hearty congratulations to all. Well done. Thank you very much.
Couldn't agree more. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. The next agenda item is resuming underage compliance operations during COVID with Chief Kirkendall. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Again, for the record, my name is Victor Kirkendall. I serve as your Chief of Law Enforcement here at TABC. And today I want to discuss the agency's efforts to resuming our underage compliance operations during COVID. Just for some background, if you're not familiar, an underage compliance operation is a form of an undercover operation or investigation utilizing minors no older than 18 years of age. Typically, they're about 16, 17 years of age, who enter in the company of other officers a retail establishment in an effort to attempt to purchase alcohol beverages to ensure that those establishments are not selling to minors. Now, as everyone's painfully aware, COVID struck Texas over a year ago, and as a result of abundance for concern of the welfare and safety of the minors who participate in these investigations, we suspended all underage compliance operations back around March of 2020. Now, fast forward to today, and if we go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Fast forward today with the COVID vaccine now available to all children ages 12 and up, we feel like we can reinstitute the underage compliance operation safely, following a certain level of procedures and protocols that we have here, which I'm going to highlight some of the major elements of those procedures. Not to go through this pretty lengthy document, but I don't want to go through the entire deal, but I just want to highlight some of the major elements there. The biggest element to that is that all the minors who participate in these operations and the officers who accompany those minors are going to be required to have received the COVID vaccine at least 2 weeks prior to the operation being conducted. Regardless, and the second element, regardless of whether or not they received the vaccine, every person involved in that operation, whatever the role may be, is still going to be required to go through a rapid COVID test before the operation can begin to ensure nobody's showing positive for COVID, to make sure nobody's going to expose anybody else during the operation. Now, with the governor announcing Executive Order GA36, we're allowing the mask to be an option. However, we strongly encourage that masks are worn during the operation, and if the minor does elect to wear a mask or is required to wear a mask upon entering the premises of a licensed location, and the permittee needs for them to remove the mask in order to verify their ID, we're giving instructions for the minor to temporarily lower the mask just long enough for them to verify their age, and they can bring the mask back up before they leave. For the next slide, part of these procedures, we created a release of liability. The intent of this document is to help educate the parents and the minor alike of the steps the agency is taking to prevent the spread of COVID. But more importantly, it also serves as a screening tool prior to those operations being conducted to make sure that nobody's showing signs of COVID. And typical questions you would have, like if you go to a doctor or whatever, they ask you if you have a fever, been exposed, things of that nature. And so this document is required to be completed before each and every operation. And it requires both the parents and the minor signature, where the only exception is if the minor is 18 and they're an adult, it doesn't require the parent's signature. So with all these procedures in place, we feel confident that we can safely reinstitute our underage compliance operations, and our agents are out there actively as we speak, trying to recruit those minors and planning those operations, which we plan to have them doing this weekend. It's Memorial Weekend, so we're going to be out. Our communications team is already sending information out to our retail and license holders, letting them know that our teams are going to be out there checking those locations, and we want them to be careful and making sure that regardless if it's our minor or not, that they're not selling to anybody underage. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions.
How many minors do we have in the program at any given time?
Well, it's hard to say right now. I mean, obviously, a lot of our minors age out because we don't use them once they're past 18 years of age. So a lot of times they're 17, 18, and we haven't done this for over a year now. So some of them aged out. So I couldn't give you an exact number, or rough idea is probably about 10 to 15 minors in a pool of for each region.
Oh, very interesting. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Hey, Chief, this is Boatwright. And I got to think that the only 16-year-old kid walking into a 7-Eleven to buy beer is with a mask on is going to be a TABC agent. You know, I wonder whether y'all can relax. I'm trying to think back to 1992 and what I would have tried to get away with. And yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
Let me speak to that, because when we first instituted, which back then was called minor stings, our sale rate out of every 10 locations we would go to, 8 of those locations would sell to our minors. Because of these operations right now, that sale rate is around 1 out of every 10. And I can tell you, because a lot of these minors that we use may be employees' children's, and including my child participated at age 15 with her provisional license. And she went to 20 locations and 8 sold to her at 15. She was about 110 wet. So yes, they are out there, and it's very concerning that as young as 15 with braces, they would still sell to them.
No comment on me being underage at that point in time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is a review of the 87th legislative session, which is not quite finished. We've got some work to do, but thank you, Director Raymond, for being here and giving us all of the inside baseball that's going on.
Absolutely. Good morning, Madam Chair Marino and Commissioners. My name is Nick Raymond, and I serve as Director of Government Relations here at the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Today, I will be providing an update on the 87th legislative session to include our engagement strategy, bills relating to the Alcoholic Beverage Code, as well as some human trafficking prevention bills, those that were recommended by the Human Trafficking Prevention Task Force and Council during the interim. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, this session has required some strategy, that and getting time with members and staff to review our items and our LAR and such. It was and always has been important for us to be accessible, usually 24/7, to all 181 members of the Ledge, and that we always provide accurate and timely information. Between all the legislative inquiries, constituent casework, and agency updates, not to mention our COVID-19 response, our engagement with the Ledge has been nothing less than extraordinary. With session wrapping up in less than a week, we continue to track and monitor roughly 280 bills, 97 of which are alcohol-related bills. Most will likely fall victim to session deadlines and die, but there's still many that are moving through the process. We're thankful here at TABC for House Concurrent Resolution 78, which has already been signed by the governor. This is a bill recognizing TABC for 85 years of service to the state. Also, as mentioned earlier, this month, the governor signed House Bill 1024 and House Bill 1755, making alcohol to go legal and allowing closed wine bottles to go from mixed beverage establishments, respectively. Other alcoholic beverage codes like 1957, which is a Texas wine labels bill, still awaits the signature of the governor, whereas House Bill 1379, which would have changed the 51% sign requirements, has not been moving through the process and is likely dead. Since last session, we have been actively participating in the Human Trafficking Coordinating Council and Task Force. During the interim, the council developed phase 1 of the state's 5-year strategic plan to combat human trafficking. The plan focused on 5 pillars: partner, prevent, protect, prosecute, and to provide support as its main foundation. These 5 Ps were also used when crafting the legislative recommendations for this session's work. An example, House Bill 1540 is the Human Trafficking Prevention Task Force Omnibus Bill, and it amends multiple sections of code recognizing those efforts within the Ps, specifically the definition of coercion to apply to adult label trafficking and child labor trafficking. Also adding items to recognize drink solicitation as an investigative tool, and those would be more specific in our efforts to combat human trafficking. This bill has been sent to the governor's desk, but has not been signed yet. House Bill 3520 and Senate Bill 315 went through the process together. SB 315 raises the age of employment at certain sexually oriented businesses from 18 to 21. As of yesterday, it has been sent to the governor's desk. And most recently, Senate Bill 766 requires E-Verify at the same businesses, and that had passed the House yesterday and has been sent to the governor's office. So these are bills that came out of the Human Trafficking Task Force. We had an opportunity to highlight them, engage with the members, and talk about how we use our capabilities in combating human trafficking and how these are relevant. But there's still a lot of time, even though I say it's 5 days away until sign die, we still have an opportunity here to educate the members and keep them informed on what's going on in their communities. In this period of time, in consideration for the other reports, this concludes my presentation. If there are no further questions, I yield my time back to the commission.
Thank you, Nick. I know the general and Nick and the chairman have done a lot of work in building relationships and making sure that y'all have done a great job advocating for TABC and the things that are going to make us even a better agency to combat human trafficking and eradicate it and labor exploitation. And so this is a huge step in the right direction. And I know we're not done yet. There's a lot of work to do, but we're all on the same page when we're advocating together. So really appreciate the time and the thousands of COVID tests that y'all had to take between now and getting your vaccine. So really appreciate it. And then also look forward to the detailed report once the session's over and we can celebrate in some of our wins and figure out strategy-wise moving forward for the next session. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Nick at this time?
No questions, just congrats on a successful session. It's a marathon and y'all made it, sort of. Another 6 days, I guess. Anyway, good job.
Agreed. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. The next agenda item is our AIMS update. Aiming for Success. Director Mosley, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Moreno and everyone online. It's nice to be here today. For the record, my name is Retta Mosley, Chief Information Officer for TABC. I am here today to provide an update on the AIMS project, including our preparation for and support of the employees and the industry as we move toward the new and easier way of doing business with TABC. We're going to cover the agenda items, Joe, if you can go to the next slide, sorry, that are up on your screen. And it will take a little time to go through them. I apologize ahead of time. But the first is a video for the AIMS overview.
We are so happy to give you your first look into AIMS. It will completely change how you interact with TABC. Gone are the days of paper applications, manual processes, writing checks, and mailing in or having to deliver your information in person. Instead, AIMS will be your new hub for doing business with TABC. Use the new tools to guide you through the process for submitting original and renewal applications. Submit items like an excise tax report. And the new product registration process will help you to get your products to market in a quicker time. It will be easier than ever to keep track of due dates or an application status. You'll receive alerts on the AIMS dashboard and in your email inbox. These new features will let you know if you have an action you need to complete or if you have a report due. In AIMS, you can manage your account profile and users. And yes, you can include a licensing service if you use one. Within AIMS, you can also apply for updates to an existing license, like changing your business location, name, or ownership. All of this is available to you at home, at the office, or on the go. You'll be able to log into AIMS from a desktop or mobile device 24/7. Welcome to the new way of doing business with TABC.
When AIMS goes live on September 1st, we will have completed 8 modules that are listed on the screen. For the record, I'll read them to you. Enforcement, enterprise management, excise tax report filing and related online payments, licensing, of course, management review, money management, ports of entry, and product registration. Next slide, please. AIM's success is dependent completely on the employees and the industry's ability to effectively use the new technology. So to this point, we designed, readiness plans for each of them. The employee plan includes opportunities for employees to have hands-on experience, peer mentoring, formalized training classes in August by the vendor, and down the road, on-demand courses hosted within the agency's learning management system. This process for the employees started in March with a small group of test leads and is continually expanding in the number of employees experiencing AIMS throughout the validation phase and starting June 7th, user acceptance testing. By August, all employees who will be using AIMS will be fully trained. Then beginning in September, the employees will receive peer support from a post-go-live support team made up of approximately 45 employees who will by that time be very well versed in using AIMS. Next slide, please. This timeline provides a visual of the major milestones within this employee readiness plan, just to give you a visual. Next slide, please. And as stated earlier, implementation of the readiness plans is essential to ensure industry's comfort level when they are onboarded into and ultimately start using AIMS. We have a comprehensive communication plan that includes AIMS messaging. This plan will be covered in more detail by Brian Black later in this meeting, so I won't address it here. We will also have a post-go-live support team for industry that is comprised of 28 employees who will have the most experience in the industry-facing functionality of AIMS. In addition to these 28 employees, there are many subject matter experts throughout the agency who will be readily available to provide support to industry as needed. Industry will receive dedicated support from this team by phone, email, or of course in person if they so desire. The last piece of this plan is the AIMS onboarding process, which I will cover in more detail in just a moment. Next slide, please. The timeline is now updated to include the major milestones from the industry readiness plan as well. You'll see that it runs from February when we started messaging all the way through July when we will end post-go-live support and onboarding. I apologize, and my allergies decided to attack me when I sat down, so my apologies. Let's move into industry onboarding, which is a phased approach designed to spread out the number of people who are coming into our system at one time. This process will include virtual sessions designed to teach industry how to use AIMS. The phased approach includes designated months for entry, and the timing is based on license and permit expiration dates. And as already mentioned, there will be dedicated post-go-live support in place by midsummer. Let's go to the next slide for a quick explanation of the industry's onboarding schedule. Each phase will have a virtual session in the first month, followed by the assigned onboarding window in the second month. From that point forward, the license or permit holder will be able to conduct their business within AIMS. The first group includes all manufacturers and all wholesalers and distributors. They will be onboarded during this first phase to ensure they are prepared to file their first excise tax reports and make their payments online through AIMS in October of 2021. Retailers with an expiration date in September or October, regardless of the year, are included in Group 1 as well. All remaining participation months are determined by the licensee or permittee's earliest expiration date. In other words, they will not have to do onboarding for each license. They simply will do it the first time based on the earliest one, and then they're in. This process will begin in August of 2021 and run through July of 2022. Next slide, please. Excuse me. This chart illustrates the number of industry partners we anticipate onboarding each month until all existing license and permit holders are functioning within AIMS. There is a noticeable difference that you will see of the number being onboarded in September versus all other months. I wanted everyone to know the vendor is slated to do load and performance tests with the cloud provider during user acceptance testing, as well as during the stabilization period in August. This effort is standard in all technology projects, but I wanted to assure you that we are taking all appropriate measures to ensure Ames is ready for everyone when we open these virtual doors to the new and easier way of doing business with TABC. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Director. It brings TABC definitely into the 21st century, right? And knowing that our goal is to have our customers feel a customer service, that we're out there to provide better customer service. Ames is aiming to do so, and really appreciate your leadership in it, because anytime you're dealing with IT, it's not that easy. And the deadlines and the milestones that you have been able to do even throughout COVID is really remarkable. So really appreciate your leadership throughout all of this.
Thank you.
And every Texan will be better off for it. Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any comments for the director?
Just a few comments. I'm thrilled that you hit on some key components to the success of this, the load and performance testing, but more importantly, the 28 dedicated individuals on the support team for industry. That's going to be absolutely critical. Of course, the 45 for employees, which is huge, but you know, the technology looks amazing, but there's always going to be issues in adopting this, and that learning curve can be cumbersome for some. So that dedicated support team is going to be absolutely huge to the success. I'm very excited to hear about that. And it looks like you're set up for a successful implementation. I'm very excited to see this roll out. Congratulations on some great work.
Thank you.
Okay, with no further comments, thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much. We look
Appreciate
forward to the big rollout.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is license structure and new fees for September 1st, 2021. And we have with us today Directors Morlock and Cardona. Thank you, ladies.
Good morning, Commission members. My name is Amy Cardona, Co-Director of Strategic Initiatives and Performance Improvement.
I'm Miriam Warlock, co-director.
We're here today to give you a high-level overview of the license structure changes and new fees TABC is legislatively required to implement on September 1st of this year. So let's talk about the
Let's hold on a second. We're having some technical issues. I can only see where you are on time. I keep feeding back into the background. So let's one. Let's just do that.
Ready? So let's talk about the 30,000 foot view of the changes. So the license structure changes we're talking about today, as well as the fee changes, are a result of the TABC sunset bill passed in 2019. There are many different provisions of this very complex bill, and the changes have become effective at different points in time. So we had some effective on September 1st of 2019, so almost 2 years ago, some effective at the end of 2020, and this last batch of changes to the licensing structure, as well as a mandate that TABC adopt new fees and rules, is the last batch of changes. The revamp of the license and permit structure occurs in 2 stages, and it's actually partially complete. So on, excuse me, on September 1st of 2019, we had 14 permits eliminated, including the 4 agents permits that we had, which affected several thousand permittees, in addition to some other permits that weren't really used much at all at that point. So we currently have 62 permits, I believe, because they added the consumer delivery permit. So the counts kind of changed because of that. The second stage of this streamlining of the license structure is more significant. Most license holders will be affected in some fashion, but to varying extents. And overall, we will go down to 37 permits overall, down from an initial total of 75. Next. So now I'll explain the types of changes occurring that will result in this reduction down to 37 permits total. So first we've got beer and ale consolidation. So I have beer plus ale equals malt beverages because malt beverages will be the all-inclusive term going forward. So beer and ale consolidation into a single malt beverage category means that we have some beer licenses that are merging with ale permits. So we have lots of businesses out there that have a license for beer and a permit for ale. And so what this will do is create a single consolidated malt beverage license in several different categories. So for example, a manufacturer's license for beer will merge with a brewer's permit for ale and will have a single brewer's license that will authorize the production of all malt beverages. The second category is consolidation of various subordinate permits into primary permits. So right now we have several permits that businesses can get to carry out additional activities that are really important for their operations, like storage of product, transport, et cetera. And they often have to get separate permits in order to do these very basic activities, and also pay a separate fee for those. Under the new structure, many of these permits will go away and the primary permit will have those authorities baked into it, if you will. So for example, a package store will be able to conduct product tastings without having to get a separate package store tasting permit. So the third category is temporary events. Under the new structure, certain permit holders will be able to hold temporary events or offsite events without getting a separate license or paying a separate fee to TABC. On-premise, this really affects on-premise retailers like mixed beverage permittees, wine and malt beverage permittees, in addition to wineries, private clubs, et cetera. And also nonprofits who currently hold these events will still be able to do so, but under a single consolidated permit. So if you look at it overall, we're going down from a total of 8 permits that relate to offsite or temporary events down to 1. And then we also have sort of the final 2 categories, we have permits that are merging. So we've got 3 late hours permits. It just depends on type of license that you have. Those are going to be merged into 1 late hour certificate. And then we also have 4 passenger transportation permits that are merging down into 1. Next. So how will this new structure translate into Ames? So Ames is going live September 1st, and this new structure is also going to be implemented at the same time, as well as the new fees, all on the same day. So we are building Ames with this new structure. So the current legacy systems will have the old structure and old fees. We are not modifying those systems. So when businesses go to onboard into Ames, they will see the updated permit structure. None of the obsolete permits will be there. And so Marianne will now talk to you about our new proposed fees.
So currently an applicant will pay a fee based on the alcoholic beverage code and a surcharge based on the administrative rules. Through the sunset process, both were eliminated, and the agency was charged with setting fees and rules so that they cover the cost of the agency to administer the code. Excuse me, I'll do that a lot, pardon me. The task force was created to consider the level of regulatory activities for each permit type. So we looked at licensing, product registration, excise tax, legal, ITD, all those components. Did the same thing, level of effort for law enforcement to mitigate risk and address criminal activity. And then we took a comprehensive look at the risk to public safety. And that was a huge, we looked at complaints, protests, investigations, and the risk to the public was a major factor that contributed to the differences that you'll see between different permit types. The task force also considered the geographic scope of each permit type, as well as the types of beverage alcohol associated. So does the business just involve malt beverages, just wine, just distilled spirits, or a combination of the 2, or all 3? And then I'd say the task force right-sized the permit fees so that it aligned those with similar attributes. For example, on the manufacturing tier, each in-state manufacturer, whether it's a brewery, a distillery, or a winery, makes one product type. They all pay the same fee, proposed fee. When I mention fee, I mean proposed. That's up to the commission, of course, to decide the fees. At the middle tier, if you're an X, which is a wine wholesaler, you distribute wine. If you're a distributor, you distribute malt beverages. If you're a wholesaler, you distribute both wine and distilled spirits. So the wholesaler will pay a little bit more than the other two that distribute one alcoholic beverage type. At the retail tier, which is the bulk of the permits in the state, a mixed beverage involves all three types of alcohol. They pay about $3,000. The next level, which would be malt beverage and wine sales, they pay about $2,000. And if you just sell malt beverages, it's about $1,000. So you can see the tiered structure based on not only risk, but other factors. The task force also considered the privileges associated with each permit type. Director Cardona already touched on the elimination of a lot of subordinates and how those authorities are rolled up into primary permits so that individual permit holders don't have to get multiple subordinates to do what they need to do. So the goal was to meet the expectations of the Sunset Commission, the legislature, the governor, to set fees so that they cover the agency costs, but also to emphasize public safety and be fair and reasonable. Next slide, please. So last week, we posted to the public website draft rules for Rule 3323, which are the proposed fees, as well as other changes to Chapter 33, which is a lot of reorganizing in advance of the stakeholder meeting next Wednesday. And excuse me, on the next slide, we're going to show you a snippet of a graphic created by the communications team, which is also linked in that public notice. And it's a great example of current fee structure, new fee structure, and the subordinates and how those privileges are changing. There's also a stakeholder meeting on June 3rd on Chapter 45 rules, which has to do with marketing practices. So those rules are being amended. One, to add alcohol by volume, ABV, to malt beverage labels. That's a requirement from last session. Also to align all the rules with beer ale consolidation and the new license structure. And also some updates for cash credit law, also related to beer ale consolidation. So this schedule allows for public involvement at several stages before the September 1st effective date. Next slide.
So on this final slide, we have an example of those graphics that Miriam was referencing about how the current permit structure and current fees translate into the new structure and new fees. And this example is from the manufacturing tier, the brewers and the wineries. So as far as structure goes, you can see that for both types of businesses, the permit structure is being greatly simplified. For businesses that currently have a brewer's and or a manufacturer's license, they move to a consolidated brewer's license. So you have some folks out there, quite a few actually, who are paying for both a brewer's permit and a manufacturer's license currently. And going forward, they'll just have to pay for the one brewer's license. For wineries, just going back to that, in the middle column, you'll see several authorities that are being consolidated into the brewer's license. So they will not have to pay for those additional authorities, such as for transport and storage. That will all be rolled up into the brewer's license, and they won't have to get those additional permits or pay those separate fees. For wineries, they will also be able to carry out certain activities they currently have to get separate permits for. And one of those would be like offsite events where they have to get a winery festival permit currently in order to do that. And this example also shows you how we're trying to make the fees within the same tier more equitable. So in both cases, you have businesses that produce one type of alcoholic beverage, and they also have the same storage and transport authorizations. And under the new proposed fee, they will pay the same amount. Under the current structure, the amounts they pay are actually quite different, kind of depending on what separate subordinates that a business may have. But generally malt beverage producers pay more than wineries do. And as Miriam said, we also have a chart like this for every permit type on our website. So if folks want to know exactly how their permit's being affected, they can go to that document. And like she said, it was linked in the notice about the proposed fees as well. And that concludes our presentation today on the new license structure and proposed fees. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Do you anticipate strong attendance and feedback when talking with industry at the June session?
Yes, we do. We know the executive director has been having individual meetings with folks just to let them be aware, those association members. So some are already aware even before we put it out there for the public. But yes, we expect robust comments next Wednesday.
And how is that feedback planned to be communicated to the commissioners?
So following both stakeholder meetings, we'll get together, talk with the executive director and Matt Chaplin, and discuss what is proposed for y'all. But then, of course, y'all can make changes as you see fit.
Excellent. Well, and I greatly appreciate all the work. I'm very interested in just understanding as much of the industry's feedback as we can get prior to making decisions as well. So anything you can do to help pass along that information would be greatly appreciated.
I agree with Scott. And I'm sure y'all put a ton of work into this. I'm going to withhold any comments on the merits until June 15th, after we see what the fees might look like after stakeholder meetings and other changes. So looks like that's what the timeline is. Yeah, June 15th commission meeting after some stakeholder meetings. Right. So in a few weeks, I'll see what the fees are and withhold comments on the merits until then. Between now and then, I just want y'all to think about keeping the fees as low as you can. I like the idea of consolidating these things, following what Sunset wants, and the rest of it. All that's good. But some of these do appear to be higher than they used to be. Some of the criteria for determining the fees looks a little subjective, like what was it? Not just costs of criminal and civil prosecution, but also public safety. I can't find that in front of me right now. At any rate, any place where we're using subjective criteria to set the fees, I hope that we can err on the side of keeping the fees low, keeping things as easy for our regulated industries and the people who work for them as possible. So anyway, that's all I've got for now. Look forward to hearing what y'all have to say in a few weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you. And just for a point of clarification, when would the commissioners be voting actually on the new fee structure?
The June 15th.
So it would be June. Okay.
For-
Hopefully we'll get a lot of communication between now and
It'll be
then.
for proposed publication at the June meeting,
Mhm.
and then at the August meeting, you consider them for adoption.
Okay, so it's really August. We're here back to feedback, and we actually have the vote in August.
You have the second vote in order to adopt them as
In
to formally
August.
make them into law.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies, very much. The next agenda item is communications with the TABC 2021 changes with Director Black. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Moreno. So glad to have you in front of us today. And also good morning to Commissioners Boatright and Atkins. We appreciate you guys out there as well. So I really appreciate you guys giving us this opportunity to brief you on our communications plan for these incredible changes that are coming. And I think our Chief Information Officer and SIPI directors did a fantastic job of really laying out all these changes that we're going to see over the summer and the fall. But of course, if we don't communicate these changes correctly and provide the tools for all of our stakeholders to get the details and the technology, we will fail. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they get this information, and we absolutely have a plan. So next slide, please. The goal of our communications plan is to ensure the alcoholic beverage industry and stakeholders realize the new way of doing business with TABC is easier, more efficient, and less disruptive. And we must help them connect to this information so they're successful. We have a number of different audiences, from employees to specific industry members, and we have measures in place to reach all of them. Next slide, please. Our team has multiple delivery options to target our message to these audiences. On our website, we have already created a TABC 2021 changes page that is a one-stop shop for all details needed for the upcoming improvements. We're using the news media and social media to get out information, and we're using email campaigns to directly target industry members. Next slide, please. Digital and hard copy flyers are providing checklists for industry members to follow to make sure they are prepared for these changes. On May 17th, General Nettles held a virtual employee town hall to prep staff on upcoming activities. It was widely attended and provided employees the opportunity for questions and answers. Upcoming meetings like today's commission meeting provides a great opportunity and venue to get out our messages, as well as in-person meetings with industry members and our auditors and agents. Next slide, please. Now, here are some key dates coming up over the next few months. We will make sure to communicate these opportunities for stakeholders to offer input so we can make changes and modify where necessary. Of course, the September 1 date is the big date for so many of these changes to go into effect. Next slide, please. Now, we are measuring ourselves to make sure we're successful in getting out the critical messages. We're using unique page views to our TABC 2021 changes and AIMS web pages. We know if we're driving enough people to these pages, then we'll be receiving the much needed information. We can use the metrics to adapt our tactics as well. If we see that we're underperforming, then we can look for additional tactics to get out the information. Right now, we have more than 25% of our stretch goal reached. So we feel like we're in a good spot, and we're confident that we're getting the information out. Of course, we'll continue to measure everything, and if we see deficits, we'll make sure we get the information to them. With that, I'm going to conclude my presentation. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss anything you guys want to talk about. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I do have a question. This is excellent, and the communication is going to be absolutely critical to the success of this. I understand the digital media approach. My opinion is a lot of business owners are more reliant upon more traditional means of communication. So you brought up the email campaign, which I think is critical. Given the paper-based nature of the permitting process today, do you have good emails for license holders?
Yes, sir, we do. We work very closely with our auditing team, our enforcement team, and obviously our technology team, our ITD team, to make sure we have the most up-to-date emails. And whenever we send emails out, we're always looking at the bounce back to see where those bounce backs are and how we can get information to them. And so if we need to, and we will, we'll send hard copy information to folks as well. We're going to make sure we reach them on every level. And as I also mentioned, our auditors and our enforcement, of course, we're going out a lot more now that we're seeing COVID restrictions pulled back. So we're going to make sure we're taking a lot of our flyers. We'll be bringing hard copies to people as well. We want to reach them, reach our industry members where they are. Is that digital? Is that email? Or is that, knocking in on a door and walking and handing them a piece of paper? We're going to try to make sure we connect with them in all the different opportunities, but that's a great question.
That's an excellent response. So thank you very much. I think that's of critical importance.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know that's not easy either, managing all of that and the back end information. So I think one of the things that we want to make sure that we are meeting everybody at where they're at. Not being tech savvy myself, but it's nice to have paper. But we also know there's a younger generation out there that does everything online. So we just want to be making sure that we're mindful, touching everybody. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is ports of entry process with Chief Ramey. Thank you very much, sir, for being here.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is John Rainey, and I'm the Chief Director of Port of Entry. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Port of Entry process. I'm going to start off with a little bit of history of Port of Entry. So it all started, the Big Bang Port of Entry started in July 1936, when the Commission created the first inspectors to work along the Port of Entry and collect the tax from the importation of alcoholic beverages coming into the state of Texas. The first bridges that were manned were in Brownsville, Laredo, Eagle Pass, and El Paso. And the first collections were close to $25,000 a year. And we're talking about the excise tax being somewhere between a nickel and 10 cents per container. In the ensuing years, many more bridges opened up along the border, and some closed. The last two bridges to open occurred in 2010 with the Donna Bridge opening and the Alcenduas, which is just south of Mission, Texas. In 1969, the Port of Entry became a division within TABC. In 1979, the legislature passed a law that made or had POE collect the cigarette tax for cigarettes that are imported into the state of Texas. Prior to that time, the comptroller's office had an employee that worked at the Port of Entry with U.S. Customs to collect the cigarette tax. So we've been collecting cigarette tax since. Next slide, please. So as the mid 70s to early 80s came about, due to a lot of economic factors, fuel crisis, the violence along the border, traffic along the border just seized up and stopped. That became a problem for POE. At that point, we had roughly 144 employees in POE. So in 1986, the legislature passed a law which allowed TABC to collect an administrative fee to help Port of Entry operate. The first fee was 25 cents, and it raised up to 50 cents. In 2008, POE came into the 21st century, and we started electronically collecting the tax. Before that time, we did it manually. So in 2011, again, we were having problems with our budgetary issues with POE. So the legislature passed a law again, allowed more distilled spirits to come into Texas, and also raised the administrative fee to $3 per container. And that's where we sit now. Next slide. So in 2014, we expanded to the seaport. That was a challenging time for TABC, POE, but we were very resilient, and we were able to take that challenge on and do a good job. And although we're not collecting right now at the ports because of COVID, the light at the end of the tunnel is here, and we'll start collecting again in July or August of this year. That's when the cruises will start up again at Galveston. In 2016, we looked at everything that POE was doing, and mostly we were just collecting a tax, and we were taxing excess alcohol that was coming in. But we started looking at the public safety implications of what was coming into the state of Texas at that time. So we started training our employees to target minors that were importing alcoholic beverages and illicit products that were coming into the state. At that same time, in 2017, we looked at the name of what we were called. Our employees were taxpayer compliance officers. So it kind of indicated that all we did was collect taxes. But we started doing a lot more than that from a public safety standpoint. We changed the name to reflect what they did, and the name now is regulatory compliance officers. Next slide. So Port of Entry staffing. Right now, currently, our staffing is 115 employees when we're fully staffed. We man 28 land ports along the border, 1,200-mile border. 22 of the ports are manned, and 6 are spot check. So when I talk about spot check, these are outlying facilities like the Amistad Dam, the Falcon Dam. We have a ferry in Los Alamos, Texas. It's the only ferry in the United States that carries cars across the Rio Grande River. And at those spot checks, because of very low traffic, we only go there when we have a full crew and we're able to send somebody over there to collect taxes. Laredo's our busiest port along the border. Interstate 35 comes into Laredo and an interstate goes deep into Mexico out of Laredo. So from a commercial standpoint and a regular traffic standpoint, we see a high demand of traffic there. We collect about 34% of our revenue in Laredo. Next slide. So this next slide has 2 photos. The photo on the left is Laredo Bridge 2, which basically flows right into Interstate 35 North. The photo on the right is Eagle Pass Bridge 2. And that photo was taken during our Pasano season. We had both lanes open. Normally we only have 1 lane open. And you can see that we were handling commercial vehicle on one side and regular vehicle traffic on another. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about our organizational structure. Out of the 115 employees, 2 are stationed in Austin, which is myself and the deputy director. And we're broken down into 2 regions. The regions really don't follow the regional boundaries of enforcement because of the makeup of where the ports are. But we try to split it in half, and we have the Southwest region, which has Laredo, Eagle Pass, and El Paso. And we have the Rio Grande region, which has Brownsville, Progreso, and Hidalgo. Each of those districts have a port supervisor and a number of employees. Next slide. So the demographic breakdown of POE, our RCO tenure is approximately 8 years. Our supervisor tenure is 13 years. Our breakdown of males to females is 54 males and 49 females. And 93% of our workforce is of Hispanic ethnicity. Next slide. So the uniqueness of POE, we're the only uniform force of TABC. So we issue our employees a uniform and a badge, and they regulate the enforcement of importations coming into the state. We put new employees into an intensive 3-week field training officer program, which is very high on customer service. Next slide. So the big difference with our RCO staff is that they don't work in a normal office environment. We don't have no staff other than headquarters at any of the offices on outlying TABC offices. They work in work booths on federal property, and we lease most of those. We lease all those booths, some from the federal government, some from private individuals. Some of our locations have no formal workspace. We have Rio Grande City that when they built that bridge, they didn't include TABC having a booth there. So our RCO works right next to U.S. Customs. Our RCOs also are issued a monthly schedule. They work rotating assignments. They work day shifts, night shifts, they work weekends, and they're assigned off 1 week in a month. Next slide. We work hard at hiring these personnel because we entrust them to handle a large amount of cash. In the last 3 years, we brought in $20 million in sales. 78% of our transactions are using cash. 22% are using a credit card. We'd like to up that. We work on getting more credit card transactions as often as we can. But most of the traffic that is along the border, and that's where we collect most of our cash, they just deal in cash. They don't have a lot of credit cards. But I see it as a new generation of customers comes in. They're more savvy with credit cards and that kind of stuff. So I see that our credit card transactions should increase in the next few years. So the major function, I mean, we collect taxes, but the major function is preventing the unfettered flow of cheap alcohol imported into the state of Texas and preventing minors from importing alcohol. Next slide. We're a force multiplier to federal ports of entry. With my discussions with the port directors from U.S. Customs, I mean, they use this as a second set of eyes. They ask us a lot of times to report any suspicious activity that's in and around the ports, and we do that. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about the actual process. So that green card right there is a referral card, what we call a referral card. Back in the 1970s, we made an informal agreement with U.S. Customs to help us collect more taxes. We would give them these referral cards, and when they deal with a customer that is importing alcohol or cigarettes, they would put this referral card either on the car or give it to the person that's walking into the United States. Next slide. So basically, when a car or a pedestrian comes into the United States, they're vetted by U.S. Customs. And Customs asks the customer if they're declaring any duty. If the customer declares that they're bringing in alcohol or cigarettes, then U.S. Customs will put that referral card either under the windshield wiper of a car or hand it to a pedestrian that's walking in and tell them to come to our booth. Our RCOs stand ready on the outside of our booths for customers that are heading basically out of the federal ports. And these customers come to our booth. If a customer has the correct amount of alcohol in their possession for the amount of people that are in that car, or if it's just one person, then our collections are pretty straightforward. We tax each container that the person has. We issue them a stamp, and we put that stamp on the containers. We collect the money, and the customer goes on their way. If for some reason the customer is over the limit of what's allowed into the state of Texas, which is 1 gallon of distilled spirits, 3 gallons of wine, or 24 12-ounce containers of beer, or equivalent, which is 288 ounces of beer. If they're over the limit, then we educate the public by telling them they're over the limit and giving them a brochure. We have brochures that tell the customer what the limit is. And we give the customer an opportunity to take the alcohol back to Mexico, or they can abandon it, or they can self-destroy the overage. Next slide. So in the picture that you're seeing on this slide, we have a customer there that self-destroyed an overage of alcohol. Next slide. So the three options again are abandon the alcohol with us, self-destroy, or take it back to Mexico. I will tell you that as far as taking it back to Mexico, I mean, very few people do that. It's a very difficult process once you're at our location to get back into Mexico. Most people self-destroy or abandon the product. If they abandon the product, then we will fill out paperwork giving them a receipt with a tax stamp showing that the alcohol was disallowed. That way that there's a proper accounting of what we've disallowed from that customer. And we keep a copy for our records. So in the photo that you're looking at in this slide, that's our Progresso pedestrian booth. Progresso is our busiest transit as far as tourist locations. Just north of that pedestrian booth, there's 2 large parking lots, and people can easily park and just walk across the bridge, which is several hundred feet long, right into the main street of Progresso, Mexico, and buy whatever wares they want to buy, and then come back across. So it's a very heavy pedestrian location. Next slide. So again, one of the primary duties is public safety. We train our RCOs. We highly train our RCOs and skilled inspectors with interpersonal skills to effectively ask questions, check identifications when needed, and check all types and brands of alcoholic beverage containers that look suspicious or do not conform to TABC code related to labels, seals, and product. In the picture depicted in this slide, that was a case where at the bus terminal in Laredo, a gentleman had a case of these 32-ounce bottles that had just come through an x-ray machine. And when the RCO pulled out the first bottle, these 3 bottles that are listed, out of the 12 bottles, these 3 bottles had crystal meth in them. And luckily, the RCO grabbed the right bottle, and she saw that it had something in there that looked suspicious. She notified the CBP officer, and he came and handled the suspect. Our RCOs are resilient from the standpoint of they're constantly seeing all different kinds of products, so they can tell whether the liquid inside is thicker than normal or has anything floating in it that looks suspicious, and they notify CBP. They do a fantastic job of that. Next slide. So a few statistics for from 2008 to April of 21, we encountered 55,000, where we disallowed 55,000 alcoholic beverage containers. The importance here is that 2,500 plus of those containers were taken away from minors. We believe that that's an important function of POE employees. And we also took away 914 packs of cigarettes from minors. We handled 10,400 illicit containers. And that picture depicts what an illicit container looks like. They come in all shapes and sizes, from gas cans, water cans, filled up Coke bottles. We've seen everything, antifreeze bottles, you name it. They try to put distilled product in it. Next slide. The reason why POE still has the job is because alcohol is cheap in Mexico. The abundance of cheap alcohol and cigarettes continue to be a driving factor for people to go to Mexico or to duty-free stores and buy the product and bring it back into the United States or into the state of Texas. So I'll give you a real quick example of a generic tequila in Mexico is $3.50. And if you even tack on our tax of $3.75, totals $7.25. Generic brand of tequila in the United States at a package store or at Walmart is roughly $10. Coyula, a lot of people love that. In Mexico, you can buy that for $8. In the United States, it costs $29.99 at a package store. So that's what drives people to go to Mexico. Cigarettes, Winston cigarettes, a carton of cigarettes costs $32 and at a duty-free store. If you add the tax, $47. In the US, costs roughly $66 to buy that carton of cigarettes. A generic brand costs $9.50 for a carton in Mexico, generic cigarettes. And in the US, it's $46.90 a carton. So those are the driving factors that keep us in a job. Next slide. Keeping the unfettered flow of alcohol from coming into Texas is an important function of TABC, POE, and helps the industry along the border. I've talked to the customs directors at all these ports, and they say that we weren't there, that although we see about 2 million containers come in to the state of Texas every year, that would be 20-fold easily if we weren't there. So we stabilized the system in Texas by not allowing the unfettered flow of cheap alcohol to come in. Next slide. This slide depicts a case that we just had recently in April at the Los Indios Bridge, which is just east of Brownsville. So in this case, the customer actually drives up and they have a referral slip from Customs. They had told Customs they had 2 cases of beer, and it was written on the referral 2 cases of beer. Our RCO asked a few questions, went to the back of the pickup truck, looked to see where the beer was, and could see that it looked like they had tried to hide the 2 cases of beer. So she kind of moved a few little things around and noticed a third case of beer. So she came back to the customer, asked a few more questions, and asked them if they would take their items out of the back of the pickup truck, which they did. And as you can see, they had roughly 13 cases of beer and another 4 cases of New Mix. And New Mix is basically distilled spirits in a can. And basically so our RCO contacted Customs. Customs came down to look at it, of course, because the customer had not declared the proper amount. Customs asked us to destroy it all. And we talked to the customer, we got all their information. We gave that information to our enforcement crew in McAllen. The customer basically told us that they took the alcohol to Houston and they sell it on Facebook. So that's how they make extra money. So I think we do a fantastic job along the border, and we keep the public safe. And if y'all remember in 2018, there was a lot of information, next slide, Joe. There was a lot of information about tainted alcohol in Mexico. And there was some reports that were put out by the USA Sentinel, which talked about the Mexican officials basically seizing around 20,000 gallons of alcohol, black market alcohol, tequila in Mexico, of which 235 gallons tested positive with dangerous level of methanol. So that's why we really target the illicit product that's coming in, because we don't know what's in it. I mean, it could be good stuff, but we don't know if it has methanol in it or not. So we're trying to keep Texans safe. That's all I have. That's what our POE crew does every single day for the state of Texas. And I'll take any questions that you might have.
Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions?
Chief Rennie, I do have a question. First off, thanks for all that you do. I know it's very hard work. I know that the crossings have been down significantly with the border closed during COVID. There was speculation that maybe it was going to open back up May 21st, and that's been extended to June 21st. As you look at just resources, as volume ramps back up when it does open up, and of course, safety protocols for our agents out there, do you have any sense of when that's going to happen?
Well, we have seen an increase in tax revenue and stamps sold starting in April of this year. In April of this year, we collected more money than we did in April of 2019 before COVID. So the traffic has already picked up. This month, it's ahead of this May up to this point, looking at the figures today. Our tax collections were 10% above what they were at this point of May of 2000. So traffic is picking up, even though the federal government still has a down. They're not, U.S. Customs really is not enforcing the mandate like they were at the beginning of COVID. So we have seen an uptick in traffic, and I believe that it's going to continue to pick up as the year goes by, as everything is relaxed in the state of Texas.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Bo Wright. Thanks for all you do. You know, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago next week, or maybe the week after, we honored Guadalupe Rueda for saving somebody's life at the border. Actually, she saved somebody's life a couple weeks from now, 2 years ago, and then we honored her in September of 2019. At any rate, you all do a lot of different stuff. You collect taxes, you seize illegal alcohol. All that stuff is important. You also save people's lives, and as you said, you're an extra set of eyes and ears for Customs and Border Protection. I want to thank you for doing that, and I want to make sure that you all know that we support you in your effort to keep our borders safe and secure. And we hope you have all the resources you need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Couldn't said it better myself. Yes, please tell all of the POEs how much we appreciate them. And we know sometimes it's a thankless job, but we're very appreciative of everything that they do to keep all Texans safe. So
Thank you.
very eye-opening. I'm very happy that you were here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item will be the order adjusting production limits under alcoholic beverage code sections 12.052 and 62.122. Ms. Horton.
Good morning. I'm also suffering with allergies, so I apologize. Chair Marino and Commissioners, my name is Shana Horton. I'm with the Office of General Counsel here at the agency. Normally you see me with rule packages, but this month, we don't have any rules to bring you. So here I am with the annual production limit order. I know you're disappointed. Don't worry. Next month we'll have plenty. Annually, we are required by law to update the amount that certain brewers and manufacturers can sell directly to a consumer on premises for off-premises consumption. Normally, we have this to you earlier in the year, but due to delays in the census, we're a little bit later this year. We couldn't get the demographic information we needed. Fortunately, none of the regulated community that is subject to this particular limitation is coming close to the line right now, so that hasn't been a problem. The annual production limit, based upon a 1.29% year-over-year population growth figure, will set the new amount at 182,273 barrels. This is before you for your deliberation decision.
Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions? Okay. No discussion. Then I move to approve the order adjusting production limits under alcoholic beverage code sections 12.052 and 62.122 as recommended by staff. Is there a second to this motion?
A second, Boatright.
Thank you, Commissioner Boatright. I do have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
All right. All votes have been counted and recorded. Motion is approved. We move on now to public comment, which is next on our agenda. Has anyone signed up? Do we have? Yes, we do. Okay, great. Where is our individual?
Left.
Oh,
We have 0.
well, okay, we have none. So we will move on to our next item. Our next item is actually executive session. However, we believe there is really no need to go into executive session at this time. So we will pass on to our next item.
Chairman, could you make a motion to pass on executive session?
Sure. I make a motion to pass on executive session. Do I have a second from my commissioners?
You have a second.
Thank you. We good?
I think that's probably.
Do we vote online? Are we good?
You're good.
We're good? Okay.
I vote
you.
in favor, just in case you wanted a third indication of approval for doing that.
Commissioner Mack, you want to jump on? All right. Next is the announcement of our next meeting date. The next regularly scheduled meeting for commissioners date is planned for Tuesday, June the 15th of 2021. Commissioners, do you have a problem with that date?
No.
Seeing the commission then is scheduled to meet on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. All right, the next up is adjournment already. The time is now 59. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.